I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work and are backed by science. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. We use only top-of-the-line formulations dosed for maximum results and the best flavoring systems available. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
My next question for you is, you've been an early adopter to a lot of things: grounding, alkalized water, pH balanced water, cacao, low carb dieting, all that kind of stuff. So I'm a guy like you that goes down his own black holes. I know you have business and then a family now, so that distracts you from going down any black holes. But like, what kind of stuff is Dave Palumbo into right now that kind of might be something people are into in the future? Like, what's your weirdest thing right now you're into? Or considering?
When you have young kids, you get into chicken McNuggets, which I never did before. But now you chicken McNuggets.
Are the spicy ones good? Have you had these new spicy ones?
Tyler had the spicy ones. I didn't eat the spicy ones yet. Right. He said they're all right.
All right.
No, but you know what? Yeah, you wind up, you're a little off. You go a little off your game when you have kids. I can't be quite as neurotic and as clean eating as I was before, but I'm still very focused on my little neurotic rituals I have. I still do apple cider vinegar. I Natron. I use the Natron brand probiotics, and I use Bubby sauerkraut, which is a fermented food. I've become really engrossed in the whole probiotic organisms, microorganisms in the small intestine and the large intestine now, making sure they're populated correctly and fed well, which the best way to feed them is take fibrillized. Soluble fiber is what feeds these probiotic organisms, because they protect your colonic lining and your small intestinal lining. That's like your best defense against any foreign invaders, any kind of microbes, anything like that, viruses. So you really want a strong, microflora in your GI tract. I'm also a big believer, obviously, in keeping the liver and kidney cleansed. For a while, even when I stopped competing, I was still eating, very high protein diet and training. I was only on HRT, but my creatinine crept up. I went for a blood work. It was I had like a 1.8. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a bad day, but I got a couple of retests and they were up. It was 1.7. I'm like, this is way too high. This is dangerous. Why all of a sudden? I never had that high. I got nervous. And I started doing, cleanses and detox, and that's when I developed all my 3-week detox. And I started using kidney stuff, and that's when I started selling it, because I noticed it brought my creatinine down very quickly. And so I said, you know what, I got to sell this stuff on DavePalumbo.com so that people have access to it. So what I found was that, especially as you get older, I think your organs need more detoxing. They need assistance, to reduce inflammation. If you reduce inflammation around the tubules of the kidneys, they can filter waste better. And so that's what kidney stuff does. Using a product like Liver Stable, which is made by Bill Llewellyn, I saw that on DavePalumbo.com, and that's got silymarin or milk thistle in there. That helps keep the bile ducts open wider. Once again, so the sludge can leave the liver, and the liver can be detoxified. So if you're taking care of your colon and your small intestine with the right probiotics, you're taking a fiber supplement for that, you're feeding and you're working the colon muscles, you're detoxing the liver and the kidneys, you'll find that your body works more efficiently. So as we get older, our bodies are less forgiving. I have young kids. Babies eat, they poop. They eat, they poop, they eat, they poop. That's the way it's supposed to be. We don't do that. I work with some women, they don't poop for a week. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how someone can't go to the bathroom. But that's because the colonic musculature gets weak. The probiotics are broken down. They have leaky gut syndrome. They have chronic inflammation in their body. And these are things that, that make you age prematurely. They cause destruction of your organs, the breakdown of your organs. So there's a couple systems. So you want to keep your kidneys and your liver clean. You want to keep your GI tract clean. You want to make sure your heart is healthy. Make sure your coronary arteries are clear. You do a cardiac CT for that. If you have a predisposition for blockages, there's things you can do. Pure EPA oil, it's 2,000 milligrams per day. There's a product called Omega V. I've talked about that before. You take 2,000 milligrams a day, and guess what? It'll help clear your arteries out. I mean, so there's a lot of stuff you can do to combat, all the things that go wrong, because you know what? For people who work out, we don't really have muscle, or bone density issues because we train, but we have internal organ, failure because we only address the outside of how we look. You might get Botox and you work out, you shave your body, but you don't worry about what's going on inside. So as I've gotten older, I'm worried more about what's going on inside my body now, because I know that that's going to help me to live not only a longer life, but a good life. And that's what you want. You don't want to be bedridden, for 20 years. I'd rather be dead than bedridden for 20 years. So when I die, I want to just not wake up one day, and I want to be walking around and doing everything, as healthy as possible. Now, look, things happen. Everyone has their own genetic flaws, and and things that go wrong with them, and there's nothing you can do about that. You can only try so hard. But my focus has been now more on longevity, but it's living a long time and living a healthy time doesn't preclude the fact that you can still build muscle. So you have to, I've learned to integrate health with building muscle and burning fat. Something I didn't do initially. Initially, I was just concerned about building muscle and getting ripped. I didn't really look at the other part of it because I thought I was invulnerable, because we all think we're invulnerable when we're 20 years old. As you start to get older and you start to see health issues pop up, you start saying, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way, because it can't be one or the other. In other words, if you want to be muscular and ripped, it shouldn't be either you're going to be unhealthy and muscular and ripped, or you're going to be healthy and small. You can do both. You have to just learn how to integrate it, and that's what I've taught myself and been helping to teach other people over the last 10 years.
So you've been helping people in some capacity for 20 years. You've been interacting with people and bodybuilders, right? And it's been accelerating more over the last 10 with more technology. My question for you is, you talk about longevity, as you talk about health, and I saw you make a video on this maybe 4 months ago. What do you think is really going on with ED? Like, why do you feel like you're getting more questions than you ever used to get about ED? What do you think is going on in our society that more and more people, and there's more and more of a market for people with erectile dysfunction? What's your thoughts on this?
I think that a lot of it is psychological. I think that a lot of people have fear, and they have performance anxiety. Because the first thing I ask people, because I get a lot of questions. I've talked about this, and the first thing I ask people is, let me ask you a question. You're having erectile dysfunction. You're losing an erection when you're having sex with your girlfriend, whatever the case may be. If you're alone and you masturbate, do you have a problem? I mean, can you perform? Do you ever have no, never have a problem. All right, well, then you don't have a problem, okay? Then you don't have a problem. If you even have a desire to do that on your own, you don't have a problem, okay? You have a mental problem, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's why they created, Viagra and Cialis for people who have anxiety, performance. A lot of people are perfectionists, especially in our industry. And what's the greatest fear, right? When you meet a girl for the first time, if you're a guy, that you're not going to be able to get it up, right? And then she's going to think you're like less than a man. At least that's what guys think. Girls don't think that way, but guys think that way. So you create so much stress and anxiety that you actually cause the problem. I know guys that actually have taken Cialis and still can't get it up because they got so much anxiety. So there's a component of that I think you have to come to grips with. I think that's 50% of the problem. The other 50% of the problem is induced by the drugs people take. So back when I was competing, if you took 50 milligrams of Trenbolone 3 times a week, you had a crazy sex drive. But nowadays, guys have to take 1,000 milligrams of Trenbolone a week. And when you do that, your prolactin levels go so crazy high that you can't get it up, because high prolactin prevents erections, okay? It doesn't prevent you from having desire to have sex, it prevents you from actually having an erection, okay? When a man has an ejaculation or has orgasm, tremendous surge of prolactin is released, and that's what causes the refractory period, which makes them not be able to have sex immediately right after. Well, if you have that refractory period all the time in your body because you have induced an enormous amount of prolactin production, you're never going to be able to have sex. Okay, so I think the dosages guys use today, same thing with DECA. I've seen these guys out there advocating, you don't need testosterone, just do all DECA cycles, 1,000 milligrams a week. You know what? Check your prolactin levels after you do that. Well, I'm taking CABR. Everything's an abbreviation nowadays. I'm taking cabergoline, which is Dostonex, which is a prolactin inhibitor. You can take all the CABR you want. When you're taking 1,000 milligrams of DECA a week, you're still going to produce too much prolactin. You're not going to be able to stop the production of it. Okay, so that's a problem. On the other side of things, you have the people who are consumed with estrogen. They think they have too much estrogen, and they take 1,000 anti-estrogens. They're on DIM, they're on Nolvadex, they're on Arimidex, Aromasin, and Femara all at the same time. Their estrogen is negative 100, and they wonder why they can't get an erection, because if you don't have any estrogen, you can't sensitize your androgen receptors. Not only won't you be able to get an erection or have a sex drive, it's really a sex drive that goes into the toilet when you don't have any estrogen, but you can't grow either because estrogen is necessary to sensitize the androgen receptors. So that's the other side. So you got the people who too much prolactin because they take the wrong drugs in excessive amounts. Then you get the guys who reduce estrogen too much. And then there's the guys who think that high estrogen causes erectile issues, and it doesn't. And they just create that in their mind, and those are the people who can masturbate, but they can't have sex with their girlfriend. So we live in a neurotic society because there's too much information out there, Anthony. That's the problem, I think, and people don't understand the science of anything. So most of the problem is in people's minds because they read online, if I take DECA, I'm not going to be able to have an erection. So before they've taken a shot, the next day they can't get an erection. Meanwhile, the DECA hasn't even started working yet. So most of what I see is self-induced, either through just not understanding the science or through psychological, issues.
I know this is something probably the people over at Titan answer, because I know you work with them and things like that. Because I never thought about this, and you and I have had conversations before about this when I've come down to visit. If someone wants to say they're on TRT for the rest of their life or HRT, whatever their age is, I mean, is it an okay idea every once in a while to go on a little bit of HCG just to kind of, I've heard this through a few of the other gurus too, with people I know, that sometimes they're like, hey, go on a little bit every once in a while just to keep your well-being up and just to kind of keep things in motion. So even not for on-off cycles, but what would you recommend to people that just kind of want to every once in a while just keep the system honest? Like, do you have any idea what those TRT protocols are in general? Is it like 100 IUs 3 times a week for 6 weeks? Like, what do you know about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can do like 500, IUs of HCG, twice a week if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with what some people like the way they feel on HCG. You're not going to get any more muscle growth, okay, or fat burning or anything out of taking HCG with testosterone, okay? What you will get is, because you will produce, your testicles will start producing something, even though it's like literally like taking a handful of sand, tossing it onto the beach. You're never going to see any more sand on the beach. So you're not really, quantitatively, you're not getting more testosterone, but what you're doing is you're creating movement down in those testicles. They're moving, they're producing blood flow there because they're being stimulated by the HCG that you're taking, which is essentially an artificial signal that's mimicking luteinizing hormone that would normally be produced by the pituitary gland. So when you have an orgasm, you might actually feel a little different because you'll be actually probably releasing some sperm, because now there's some production, even though it might be useless sperm that they could never get anyone pregnant. There's something being produced down there, whereas before there wasn't. So some guys feel that they get a better sex drive on it. It might be psychological. It might be somewhat just because there's a sensory aspect of what's going on there. They're feeling a little more. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with taking it, but a lot of guys are on a budget. So if you can't afford to add the HCG on top of the testosterone, you don't need it. I never took HCG when I was on cycle, ever. The only time I ever took it when I would be off cycle. And when I took HRT for 10 years, I never took a single shot of HCG. I took it when I came off, when I was trying to get my wife pregnant. And now, because I'm not on HRT for the last 5 years, I'll take a shot of HCG every 10 days or 14 days just for good measure. I don't even know if I need it, but I just, I feel like maybe it peps me up a little bit. I don't know. But I don't need it, at this point. So the question is, does it make you feel better? If it does, take it. most of the hormone replacement clinics protocols do include testosterone, HCG, and a little bit of Arimidex. That's the standard protocol from the Longevity Society or whatever, whoever developed it, that most of these clinics go by.
Here's a couple rapid fire ones for you. What's an item? Maybe it was given to you. Maybe it was by Amanda. Whatever. Name something that you've purchased or have that was under $100. It was a phenomenal purchase.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I'm trying to think what I've received in the mail recently that.
Mine is my Series 800 Braun razor. It was like $120. I love that thing. It's easy. I don't have to wet my face to shave. That's my vote for me.
I haven't tried that. I might have to try that. I always feel like though when you shave your face, I like to get like that exfoliation going on with like that you get with
it's
normal
different.
razor.
Yeah.
I use the razor what I do is I don't like to use new razors. Like I don't like to change the blade too much because when I do, I cut my face right away because I'm a hard shaver. But when the blade gets a little dull where it's at the point where it's not super crazy sharp, I feel like I can shave like harder, and I feel like I get almost like the skin gets exfoliated. I'm convinced in my mind that by doing that every day, I'm actually causing my skin to rejuvenate more because I'm taking off the dead layer. That's my. I don't know if there's any truth to it. It feels right to me, so I do it. When I use a regular like buzzer razor, I just don't. I feel like my skin just doesn't look as good. I don't know.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
It could be psychological, but it could be completely in my head, but I'm not sure.
Nothing. You don't have any sort of weird handy device, or maybe it was even something for the kids. It was under $100. It's a lifesaver.
A lifesaver? I don't know. I tell you what. I like where's my little mini? I like my mini massage unit here. I didn't pay anything for this because they sent it to me. It's a review, but this thing. I'm telling you, if you're a bodybuilder and you work out, I mean, you could get the big one too. This is the little mini one. It's just handy. I just like the way it looks, the red. But if you get stiff muscles and you don't have time to go for a massage, or maybe because of COVID you're not going, buy one of these guys on Amazon. I'm telling you, you'll thank me. No one's hands are stronger than these units. Okay, and the big ones. Let me see if I get the big one here. This big one, this is a little over $100, but this one, it's like putting a jackhammer on your body. But it's smooth, it penetrates where you want it to penetrate, the muscles that are sore. And I can almost do my whole body. I'm pretty flexible. I can reach my back and stuff like that. But if you can't, even if you have your girl or your guy, whoever you're with, do it. This is it's like having the strongest hands in the world at your fingertips. You can put it on your legs. I sit all day long, so I put it on my hip flexors. They get all tight and everything like that, and loosen them up. That's probably the best personal device that I could say that has helped me in terms of as I'm getting older, because I'm always stiff. And like I said, I wish I had a masseuse on staff that was giving me massages daily, but I just not only did I not have the person who can do it out here, but I just don't have the time to do it. So this is great.
2 more questions for you. When I say successful, who comes to mind for you and why?
In terms of our industry?
In general, it could be anybody for you.
Well, I'll stick to our industry. I think Jay Cutler's very successful. I think that if you want to, I don't know if anyone could be, this guy from when he was a teenager kind of was so focused on and he knew what he wanted in business and stuff like that. And his whole career has been conducted in a business like man. He's almost too controlled to believe. The maturity level he had at a very young age was unbelievable. So I respect what he's accomplished and and the money he's made and he's always done it on his own terms. He's a guy who was offered a Weider contract when he was like 19 and he turned it down. So that tells you that's confidence in yourself. When you can do that, because I don't think there's anyone out there who would have done that. So. I think in our field, I think that should be admired because he's a success story and he didn't take any shortcuts. He didn't try to cheat the system. He didn't try to do it, in an illegal way. He did everything by the book, but he was smart. He surrounded himself with people who were knowledgeable. He asked a lot of questions. He never thought he knew more than anyone else, and he proved, and look, you can see how successful he is to this day. And the guy has got a nutrition company and he works his ass off, traveling all over, promoting things. He doesn't even need to work. He's got enough money, he doesn't need to work, believe me. I know some of the investments he's made, he told me. He doesn't need to work. I said, why are you still doing this supplement stuff? It's like a grind. He goes, it's a challenge. I like to challenge myself. So I respect that about him.
I do too. I mean, I like him for a lot of reasons, but like a lot of times, unfortunately, these guys don't even really sign their own stuff anymore, but he still signs his shit.
Yeah.
Like he'll have his whole tables full and he's still signing his stuff. I didn't plan on answering the question, so I didn't think about it at length, but I appreciate what Rob and Dana Lynn Bailey have done. I like the life they live. They basically built their own gym. They live on a farm.
Yeah.
And, she built a hell of a brand and they worked their asses off to do it. So I appreciate what they did. Final question for you.
Yeah,
Anthony,
I can see you living on like a desert island someplace. I could absolutely see you having you'd need like a satellite link so that you can have communication with the rest of the world. But you would be way happy if you were just in your own little island by yourself there, and you could meditate during the day and grow your own food, but still communicate via the internet with people and do like interviews like this, just so you stay connected. But you're in your own world. I think that you would do great there.
Yeah, I call it. I'm very envious of Bill Murray. Like I want the Bill Murray life. Like to me, that's an amazing life. I'm leaving on Saturday. I'm going to Boise, Idaho. I'm going to Idaho and Wyoming for a week and a half hiking. So yes, that definitely suits my personality. The one I want to end with, and we all know where these are tough times and all that kind of nonsense, and people are dealing with a lot. We're talking about erectile dysfunction and anxiety and people overthinking things. So I'll get personal for a moment. I'll briefly share something that comes to mind for me, and then I'd like to hear you kind of share your experience. But I'd like to share briefly on how something in my life once that was a completely shitty moment and was a negative ended up later being a very big positive. And then I'd like to hear one of yours, because you have a lot of experience either, with the medical school stuff, working at MD, the USA's, doing everything you did within that. And then at one point you went through your own divorce in life. And what I want to share is, with my experience, once upon a time, before I was even into bodybuilding, I wanted to be a firefighter. That was the only way I thought I would be able to make a decent living. I went and I was going to school for fire science. I took the exam. I got the highest score you could get within the state. Right. So I was technically number 3 on the list. I was a good guy. I didn't do anything wrong. But I was overlooked for a lot of bureaucratic and whatever reasons. I just wasn't liked. And it was a massive form of rejection. I was disrespected immensely. And for years, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to take my destiny in my own hands. And that's why I opened a supplement store and figured the supplement store would only survive if I became a good bodybuilder. Right. And then the rest is kind of history. So with things that you've done in your life, trials and tribulations, can you think of a time where something that seems super shitty and would never end up being a positive turned out to be one for you?
I guess I would have, there's a couple, I had a couple of those moments in my life. I've talked about jail before, so I'll talk about, when I was 14, my mom died. She had pancreatic cancer, but it was one of these prolonged deaths. It was like she was sick for like 2 years straight. It was a terrible decline. And my way of handling a lot of emotional pain is to just kind of not deal with it. And, I kind of went into my own little shell and didn't really deal with it. Prior to, when she was healthy and everything like that, up until 14 years old, or, whatever I was, I had supreme belief in my parents instilled so much belief in me that I believed if I would have believed I could fly, I would have levitated off the ground. That's how much, I could think it and create it. That's how I was, because I was so confident in myself, because I had a very good support system, and that's what parents are supposed to do for their kids, right? So I had very good parents in that sense. I remember one particular instance. I was on a soccer field. I played soccer. I started out, I wasn't good, because when I first started, I had big feet. I'm pigeon-toed. I was a good athlete, but it was, with soccer, everything's with your feet, and when you're a small kid and you haven't really grown into your body yet, it's difficult. So after about 2 years of playing, I became very good, because I was very aggressive and I wasn't afraid. My father made me fearless, so everyone feared me on the soccer field. I had big, long legs, and so I became a good soccer player. And I was at a point where I remember this one instance, I was in a game and I was sitting there and I was like, you know what? I visualized in my head the ball going over the defender and me beating the defender, running past him, getting the ball and kicking a goal. Not 30 seconds later, the ball went flying over. It was like I had a premonition of what was going to happen. I just, instinctively ran, beat the guy because I was way faster than everyone on the field, kicked this ball, into the goal, and I was like, this is easy. Life's easy. I could do anything. Anything I think about, I'm going to create. When my mom died, okay, all that confidence went out the window. It was like all of a sudden, nothing was easy anymore. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't. School wasn't as easy anymore. Sports, the other kids were getting a little bigger, growing now we all hitting puberty, whatever. I was lazy by nature because everything came very easy to me, So I was having to work so much harder, it was like nothing was happening. And what had happened and what had changed was, and I realized this 30 years later, when I kind of started reading books, and I lost the belief in myself because I lost part of my support system. And I didn't understand this at the time. So I was doubting myself. And when you doubt and you put that out into the universe, what do you get back? You get more doubt. You get more doubt back. You don't get what you're thinking about anymore because now you're not really sure if that's really the thought you're projecting out there. You're projecting doubt, you get doubt back. And it took me probably another, I finished in high school, I did well, and I got into a college, but I wasn't at the top of my game. It took me till I started bodybuilding really, till I got that confidence level back. And I realized that, because with bodybuilding, I had this great science background, right? I went to college for biology. I went to medical school for 3 years. I had so much knowledge that I found that it built confidence in me. And I started applying that knowledge to building my physique. And I realized that I had an advantage. All of a sudden, I had this advantage over people, and I was achieving things that other people weren't, and I was passing people. In other words, I started picking up steam again, and that's why I think I was so why bodybuilding was so. It was like it couldn't feed me enough. It was like, holy mackerel, I got it back. The mojo is back, so to speak. And I didn't realize it was just that bodybuilding was building confidence in myself because I felt strong, I felt good about myself, I felt like I was able to change the way I looked readily, and now people are asking me what to do. Hey, how did you do that? What do you take? What supplements are you taking? How do you use these drugs? Whatever the case may be at the time. How do you train? And I'm like, people are asking me advice? So that empowered me. And once I realized that I never had lost it, I always had that gift. I had forgotten about it, and I had lacked confidence in myself. Now I got that back, and I had control over it. It wasn't just haphazard, whereas when you're a kid, you don't know why you have it. It's just there, right? Now I actually had control over it, and I had control over my thoughts. So there was a huge learning curve. And obviously I had to at some point deal with the death of my mother too. That also helped me gain a lot of confidence. So I realized it probably was a necessary thing for me to go through for me to get to where I am and who I am today in this world, because it built self-reliance upon myself. Because losing a parent or losing someone who's a support system makes you have to pick up the slack yourself. Now maybe I would never pick, maybe if I had two parents that enabled me, I wouldn't have been the guy who could have been out there teaching other people how to do this. So maybe I had to go through that to be able to learn how to then help other people who need to learn how to get through the same thing that I went through. And it changed my life. At the time it felt like a change it for the worse, but in the long run I realized it was the necessary step. And that's why I always tell people, and you've heard me say this before, there's no mistakes in my life. Everything happens for a reason, you just don't know the reason. So when you're going through something that's terrible, at the time, you don't really know why. It's hard to see what the good in it is, but there's always something that it was necessary to go through that to get to where you're going to go later.
Follow-up question for you on that I wasn't planning on, and I know you've dealt with so many athletes that you understand they all have their own motivation. Some are driven by putting themselves down; they're kind of negative and insecure. They go to a dark place. Other people, they love themselves. They're like, I'm the fucking man. That's why I'm going to win. Like, there's different personality types.
Yeah.
So what kind of personality type was it for you that you were driving yourself? Like, for me, it was about proving people wrong and about focusing on the hard things in life. And that was my inspiration to get under heavyweight and move it. So what was kind of your psychology? Was it from a positive or a negative standpoint that was driving you to push?
I think it was a fear of failure, number one. I think we all have that. Anyone who's very driven has a fear of failure initially. I wanted to be able to do something, more than anything in life, I wanted to be able to do something that I really enjoyed and make money doing it. So when I found bodybuilding, I said, and that's why when I left medical school, that was a huge thing for me because I never did anything risky like that. I was always a guy who went by the, played by the rules. You go to school, you go to college, you go to, if you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school. You don't quit anything. There's no option. If my mom was alive, I probably would be a doctor right now. But I knew that wasn't. So for me, I said, you know what? I love this bodybuilding. I wonder if I can make a living doing this. Now I didn't tell anyone this because I figured people would think I was crazy, right? So I said, I feel like I'm being drawn to this, and I always trusted in my gut. Only maybe once or twice in my entire life I didn't listen to my gut instincts, and things went terribly wrong from not doing that. I learned my lesson, but so something just told me, you know what? Follow your gut. I don't know where it's going. I don't know how I'm going to pay off this $120,000 in student loans. I don't know how I'm going to make a living from this, but you know what? It feels right, and so I went with it. And so, from proceeding from a point of fear initially, and doing things in obsessive, over the top, fashion. When I was a runner, I was overdoing it. I was overtraining and I was starving myself and doing nutty things. I learned balance, and I realized that when you have balance and you have control over what you're doing, because you're not overdoing, you're not underdoing, you're finding the right middle ground, you could pretty much achieve anything you want. But you have to have a game plan. You can't just go running into the wind and expect to get what you want. So I said, all right, I know what my game plan is. I know where I want to go with this. Now, how I'm going to achieve a level of success that I'll be able to support myself financially and not have to ever worry about money, because that's something, growing up, my parents had jobs, and I guess we would be considered middle class. I never really had a want for anything. I didn't have extravagant, gifts and toys and stuff like that, but I had everything I needed. But I never wanted to, my parents would fight over money and stuff like that, just like probably everyone's household did. But I didn't want to ever have to deal with money. I wanted to say, you know what, I want to have enough money to do what I want. I don't want to have to have a fight with my spouse, or I don't want my kids to ever have to say, oh, Daddy, I want this, and I have to say I can't afford it. I didn't want that. So I wanted to be able to be self-sufficient. And I knew that if I pigeonholed myself into a job, I would limit what I could earn. I wanted to kind of be my own boss in a sense. But I didn't know how to get there. But it doesn't matter. You don't have to know how to get there. You just have to do what you like doing and do it well, and don't quit. Going back to that original mantra. And believe that you're going to achieve what you need to achieve. And you know what? Doors open up at the right time, and money comes to where it needs to come to. When you're doing what you like to do, okay, and you're doing it well, and you're dedicating yourself to it with a no-quit attitude. And that's something that has to come from here. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, and like I told you, going back to what I originally said, I stopped believing in myself for those, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years, and those are my 5 or 6 worst years of my life. But I learned, and I retaught myself how to believe in myself again, and I empowered myself. And that's what you guys out there. There's nothing wrong with falling a little bit, but then get back on your feet and start working towards. And as long as you're doing something that you really enjoy and doing it well, you'll succeed.
Dave, I think that's a perfect place to end it. I'm hoping people learned a lot of new stuff about you. I definitely did today. So, what are the closing remarks you got for the RX community?
Closing remarks are that there's no closing remarks, because this is a continuation. It's like a mini series that just never ends, and the saga continues. And as long as, hey, look, you know what I always tell people out there? I say to yourself, don't let other people tell you what you can and can't do. Do what you like to do, okay? And don't worry about the consequences in terms of, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to impress my parents? Is the community going to think I'm doing the right thing? Do what you like, as long as you're willing to work at it. If you're not willing to work at it and you're just going to talk, I have people come to me, I want to be a pro bodybuilder. They're absolutely not ready to do the work that it entails to get there. They like the idea. They say, I want to look like Chris Bumstead. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't have half the work ethic of Chris Bumstead. You don't have half the genetics of Chris Bumstead. And you want to be Chris Bumstead? You're living in a fantasy world. Show me that you're willing to work as hard as Chris Bumstead, and then we'll talk. And they'll do it for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden I don't get an update from them, and they disappear. So don't just talk the talk. Live the life. And if you do that, you'll never fail.
And with that, I'm Anthony Pasquale. We're signing out. Until next time, this was Alive with Dave Palumbo.